Pirates, ninjas, Vikings. What looks like a vintage railroad trunk is actually just plywood, glue, and a bunch of prop shop magic. In this video, I will walk you through how I built a period-looking trunk that appears like it's been through 100 years of travel, but was really made last week in the prop shop. Whether you're building stage props, distressing set pieces, or just love watching something being built, you're in the right place. Stick around to the end. I show the weathering tricks and final detailing that really sell the illusion. So our trunk is actually made out of 1/2 inch thick plywood. These 2x2 pieces of pine reinforce the corners of the plywood box, and they're also the structure that holds up the top frame. So everything is just glued and stapled together, and clamps go on until everything is dry. The top frame is just made out of more 2x2s. And I've yet to find a piece of plywood that's actually flat. So by using this spreader bar, the top frame slides right in. And the bar can knock right out. And this is what it looks like, and everything is level. Now the top is just a little bit larger than the bottom, and that overhang I'm going to take off with a flush trim router. And make sure all your staples are all the way in. The trim is made out of 1/4 inch plywood. And this piece I cut a shallow groove on the table saw, so it looks like it's actually 2 pieces when we're all done. I'm going to knock the corners off this plywood so I can go over it with a roundover bit on the top and bottom, so those corners aren't sharp on the hands. And of course, sand everything. I'm also going to go in with my saw and cut out a tiny notch where these plywood pieces meet, so it looks like the line is continuous. And there's the basis of everything, our plywood box. Now, off to the paint department. Everything is getting 2 coats of paint. The plywood is thirsty, and the 2 coats help smooth out the plywood grain. I also painted the trim pieces, which got a little fuzzy from the plywood grain. So I ran some sandpaper over that to smooth it out, and then taped off so I could paint the trim. And don't forget the bottom when it's dry. For the handles, I cut some thin strips of plywood, and I glued them all together using all the clamps in the shop. So I could make these pieces, which I painted gold. For the handles, I got some belts from the resale store. and drilled a hole through the cover piece, which gave me a spot to punch a hole through the belt. And then it was just drilling holes in the side of the trunk. And then attaching everything with washers and nuts. I also did the same kind of thing with my locks. This is just plywood glued together. I used the trim pieces to give me that consistent gap. And once those were painted, I glued and stapled them on. I also used a metallic marker to add some details. And then I went around and cleaned up all the paint lines. To weather this, I mixed up 1 part of my brown paint, 1 part of this matte polyurethane, and 5 parts water. And when you're distressing props, think about where the dirt's going to collect. It's going to go around the handles. It's going to be on all the edges. Where is this going to bump into things? What got spilled on it? This is where the dirt is collecting. Now, once you got your dirt mixture on there, you're going to want a wet towel. And you're going to take the towel and try to wipe off as much dirt as possible. The dirt you can't get, especially in the cracks, that'll be the darkest. But what you can rub off, you won't be able to get it all off, and that's going to make it look weathered. Now, to help this dry, you might want an elevated fan. I'll put an information card up in the corner if you can click on to see how to build that. So once this was dry, that paint drip was unfortunate. So I'm going in with a wet towel again, and I can scrub off what I don't want. If something got too much dirt, I can scrub it clean, or cleaner. This is supposed to be a piece of used luggage. And once everything is dry, I can go in with a clear coat of matte polyurethane. Now, don't point the fan at this to let it dry. If you try to dry polyurethane too quickly, it might end up cloudy. And that's how I built this trunk. Actually, I built more than one trunk. Being a stage prop, it looks great from 10 feet away, and it's sturdy enough to jump on. So that is how I built a vintage railroad trunk prop out of plywood. It looks like it came from an antique store, but it's gonna smell like sawdust for a while. I hope this helps with your show.